A round of applause to our panelists. I know it's been a long day, but I'm excited to welcome you to what I feel is going to be one of the most important conversations here at our summit. With a global creator economy that surpasses $100 billion, Africa is already valued at a multi-billion range with a strong growth on a horizon. Ghana's youthful digital ecosystem paired with strategic policy and platform investments positions us to unlock as much as $10 billion in creative and cultural economic value over the next decade. When we talk about unlocking $10 billion in the creator economy, we're not just talking about viral moments. We're not just talking about hit songs, and we're not just talking about global festivals alone. We're talking about systems. We're talking about how culture becomes infrastructure and how creativity becomes economic power. And lastly, how our identity becomes exportable value. Ghana already has what many African countries are trying to manufacture. We have global cultural relevance. We have a diasporian emotional loyalty. We have intergenerational creative talent, and a narrative that travels far beyond our borders. So this panel is about interrogating what must shift so creators can move from survival to scale, from passion to platforms, and from visibility to ownership. So I hope that this afternoon you're ready to journey with me in this discussion. Although I am a lecturer, I'm still going to put my lecturer hat on, and I hope you're taking notes. I'm going to be looking out for those of you who are taking pointed notes, and of course, giving it an opportunity to ask questions to our amazing panelists today. So, are we ready for this journey? Yes? Can I hear you a little bit louder? Are we ready for this journey? Brilliant. Now we're talking, now we're talking. So let's transition into our conversation here. It's an honor to be with you all here today. Now, I am big, of course, on giving our flowers. So as I introduce a few of our panelists to speak today, I just want to recognize them for their work, and starting with Ibrahim, who will set the tone for us. Congratulations on your recent Gold Award at Miami Art Basel. Can we give him a round of applause? All right. So Ibrahim, much of your work intervenes directly in public space using materials shaped by colonial and post-colonial economic systems to expose moments, of course, in infrastructure, society, and break down meaning. Sorry, this sounds like my big lecturer question, but you'll get it, it'll come, yeah? But in a continent where we're still negotiating the legacies of extractive systems, how do you see cultural practice, particularly large-scale artistic intervention, as a form of invisible infrastructure that reshapes how people imagine progress, ownership, and national transformation?
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here, and I'm really thankful to the organizers. It's quite interesting. I wouldn't go back in time. I'll just talk about what I'm doing now. There's a project I'm currently working on. So, back in the late 1800s, the British started building the Gold Coast Railway. And the Gold Coast Railway was post-slavery era. And the idea was to build, after you couldn't take the human being as a commodity anymore, the idea was to move onto resources that were on the land. So during the late 1800s, there was agitation to take the golden stool during the Fifth Anglo-Ashanti War. So a lot of labor was taken from many parts of West Africa in order to build this massive railway infrastructure in the Gold Coast. And for that to happen, a lot of wood was brought from India, from Brazil, from many different places. And even the steel that was brought to Ghana was actually fabricated in Germany, in England, and other places. And you can imagine what built the system was labor. And at the time, they built it around areas where, because Ghana was already like a leading producer of cocoa in the world. So there were buildings around places where there was palm, there was cocoa, there was rubber, there was manganese, because manganese was very important to the British for the First and Second World War. So fast forward now, in the last few decades, the governments, through systematic programs, they've been erasing a lot of these railway tracks. So again, because a lot of these because we've moved from the narrow gauge to the standard gauge, so they no longer think that is important. So they are being sold to scrap dealers. But you have to imagine that all those spaces have accumulated what? Memory over years, over a century of memory. Each time a train goes on top of this, it leaves a mark on top of it. And also the wood that was used to build the sleepers in the railway, in the forest. Imagine the conversations that these kinds of materials have had with the ecosystems within these spaces. And the wood has had 100 years to season. So it means that infrastructurally, even if these places were being destroyed and then you took out the wood, it means that you could build a new type of institution with it. And immediately, that institution starts from a place of what? Collective memory. Yeah. So what we are doing is that we're going to these forest areas and we're negotiating with the people who are doing these decommissioning. And we're buying as much of the wood that we can, because as part of the project that we're doing in Tamale with red clay, the idea is to expand it, but no longer, not just building with the bricks, but building with actual materials. So like the jute sacks and all the other materials that we did. Imagine having, let's say, 10,000 or 50,000 of these timber logs that were used, let's say, 130 years ago, and using that to build a pavilion. Imagine how charged that pavilion would be. So it's almost as if the architecture that you're building in itself, it's like, what's the name? It's a memory box in itself before we collectively come together in order to be able to put memory into it. And suddenly this is value, because then other people in other parts of the world are looking at it and realizing that, but why haven't we been thinking about architecture within this way? Why have we been thinking about the relationship between culture, architecture, memory in this way? And that generates an entire memory within itself, which is quite invaluable. You cannot place a price tag on it.
I love that. I love that response. I think that that's a powerful point of how we look at the remnants of the past, historically what exists, and how that drives us towards inculcating our infrastructure for the future. Because most of us think that we have to build from nowhere, where we have nothing to build upon. We look at where our community, our political standing is right now and say, oh, it's destroyed, it's this, it's that. There's so many negative commentaries I hear about where we are as a country. But we forget of what was and what is that can allow us to continue to build. If we're talking about unlocking this $10 billion economy, the materials are already there. So how are we using that infrastructurally? And I think that's a really brilliant place to start. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, still on that limb, I haven't left you alone yet, Ibrahim. I'm coming back to you. I want to talk a little bit more deeply because we have a number of many African creatives who are still kind of navigating between survival and global visibility, right? Which you've managed to be able to do, get this global capacity for the brand of what's happening here in Ghana. And so from your journey, what does it actually mean to build talent that is rooted rather than extractable? And what kinds of cultural or institutional infrastructure do we still lack to sustain that practice?
It's actually quite interesting, you know, when you're a creative and you're starting to produce. When I was in art school, one of the things that we had to do quite well was to think about ways in which we could think about art beyond just this idea of making objects, was to think about it from a point of a gift. I know we live in a country where there are so many systematic failures, structural failures, things like that. Those structural failures themselves are gifts in themselves. You know, normally people think about failure as an endpoint, but failure in itself is material. Imagine like if you're talking about our history from the pre-colonial period to the colonial period to like the post-independent era, there's so many remnants, so many issues. And for me, that has always been important as a starting point to think creatively about ways in which, and not just about those failures themselves, but also about people. Maria was talking about community, which for me has always been very important. This idea that when we're growing up, my grandmother was a collector of fabrics, and she collected so many different types of fabrics, which she didn't really do anything with them, like plates. When you came into our house, it was like a symbol of pride, like her cultural values and all that, and all those things are very important. When I started 10 years ago, when I started building red clay, at the time a lot of people thought I was crazy. They're like, oh, why would you go up north to build a studio? Those people don't understand art or anything. But art is not something that we all know and understand. It's something that we're all trying to learn.
Right.
Create, like when it comes to culture, culture is one of the few things that no one ever truly knows within this world because it's constantly evolving. Inventing, we're reshaping it as we go along. That's why humanity if you think culture is not important, then go back to the caveman era and then see if you'd survive within that period. Culture, that's thing that drives the engine. And in order to be able to be successful in what you do, you have to already acknowledge the work that other people have done. Particularly when you go to the villages and the local communities. I learned quite a lot from those areas. The women who are making the pots, who are making the baskets, people who are ordinarily doing things. Like even I spent a lot of time going to the railway for a long time, just observing work at the railway. The men repairing the trains, repairing the railway tracks. In all these knowledge systems, I really believe that light within that creative capacity really helped me in order to be able to really think about how to really open up the work that I produced.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So I think what we can land on with this particular point that Ibrahim has made is the fact that culture indeed shapes how infrastructure is understood for us, how talent is actually valued, and of course, how futures are claimed. So ultimately, without our cultural grounding, even the most ambitious development plans that we have, stand for the possibility of abandonment. So how are we rooting culture in the things that we do? And for those who are young creatives here, how do you define yourselves? We had the pitch competition just here of them telling a little bit more about their businesses, but what was it rooted in, right? And how does that come back and speak to the creative economy that we have here? And that's what we need to see more of, that cultural grounding. So thank you so much, Ibrahim, for sharing that. So now we move on to the lady amongst us, Lady Dentaa. Can we give her a round of applause for such a successful event that she just heralds over in our additional sister land of Barbados? So proud of you. That is so amazing for that talented work. And thank you for being one of the first to be able to tell African and Ghanaian stories, giving the voices to individuals like myself, individuals like those in the audience who had a chance to just share their connection back to our country. So thank you for that and being that pioneer. So, from your experience with GUBA, what cultural narratives about Ghana resonate the most strongly with global audiences, and which ones are underleveraged?
I would say our music. And I'll say our music. This year marks 100 years of high life music. Did anyone know this? Anyone?
We
yes?
have 2 people.
Do you think that we could have done more to kind of promote it? 100 years of high life music. And I feel like we should have celebrated this on bigger platforms.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of the times, Ghana, we start things and then others take over. Like, in terms of us owning stuff, like, it's difficult. I don't know what happens. We are the first to do a lot of things. And I was very kind of like hurt to see how the high life music, 100 years, we didn't celebrate it that much. I know we had events here, but I feel like it should have been globally
Right.
done. And under, what was the last part of the question?
So I wanted to understand a little bit more about what resonates the most and then what's underleveraged. So what aren't we doing well when it comes to the stories that we tell?
I think we are able to share our own stories. So for the likes of, myself, Wademaya, we are promoting as much as we can the continent, the positiveness, because if we don't share what we have, others, especially in the diaspora, are selling negative things about us.
Sure.
One of the things that even made me move to Ghana was one day my 9-year-old son came up to me, was like, Mum, they said that, Africans, we live on trees, we live on this, there's no nice places. And I really wanted to show them that this is what we have. It's not all like that. So it's really important that we share our own stories as much as possible and the platforms that we have. But it all comes with infrastructure, support, for us to be able to do that.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So I feel as though from what you're sharing with us, what we do well is that we have the culture, we have the story, we have the narrative, we have the highlight, we have the history, but we don't amplify it ourselves. Oftentimes we may wait for others to celebrate our kente, who we are, and then we exploit that and say that this is the entire continent, the country of Ghana, and it's not. We're more than just kente. We're more than high life. There's so much in the north, in the south, and we don't do enough to share those stories?
We
Go
don't,
ahead.
because even when we went to Barbados and we took the Ashanti King, and the history that he poured, the speech that he made was so powerful. Like our culture is so powerful. Even the way that he went in dressed in his kente, people were asking, what does that cloth mean? You know, when when he's speaking and what's the name crowd? The ones, they're charming for making noise. What does that mean? You know, we have so much culture that we can export. We need to look at creatives as export of intellectual property.
Agreed.
And not as influencers.
Exactly.
And I think that that's really key. So we have so much, there's so much for us to do, but we need to start amplifying it as much as possible.
Agreed. So now you've just set up the piggy to go to Abdul Karim. A big round of applause for continuing what has been an amazing flagship festival program, culture that has catapulted from just being a music festival to now incorporating health and wellness, thinking about food, how we bring it all together. So thank you to you too. So building off of Dentaa's point here and being in this space, what are some monetization models that work best for Ghanaian creators right now? And which ones are being underexplored?
So many are being underexplored. As you can see, there's like 1,000 events happening this December, and everybody's trying to catch the cocoa season for this December period. But we have 12 months a year. I think there's an opportunity for us to overexplore opportunities that exist throughout the year for our different ecosystems, right? The beauty of Ghana is it looks completely different from the north. I love his work than it does right now here in the south. And we need to, as Dentaa said, figure out how we can communicate those values. You know, when we started our festival, I'm a young kid born in the diaspora that grew up here, went to school in Ghana. I have a very different experience than a kid that grew up here and went to school in Ghana. I have a very different experience than any black man that grew up in America and they went to school. So we live in the middle. So what I felt was an opportunity was that I wanted to create a space where people like me can communicate our culture, because I can understand it as a true Ghanaian that grew up here and walked in these streets and lived here, and I can also understand it from a black person growing up in the United States. But because of the way we individually grow up and our different perspectives on the world, we have very unique perspectives about value, right? So growing up here in Ghana, obviously, when I watch everybody do the pitch, what you need is, you know, you need that investment. You need that vehicle to be able to grow your business. But when you grow up, everyone near you is somebody that you can see wealth, you can see growth, you can see opportunities, whereas people growing up in the diaspora, like Dentaa, myself, you're probably one of the best in that space that you're in. So we all have different vices. So for me, I see a vehicle as an opportunity. If black people in America have a $2 million spending power, how do we work together to be able to create an ecosystem to support black people all over the world, right? It's a very Pan-African view, and I'm very idealistic. And we started through edutainment, right? We wanted to be able to showcase Ghana in a very different light, in a way that could allow people that we grew up with to see themselves here. Because as you're talking about, so many people have created a narrative about what it means to be African or what it is to be African. And we're now challenging people to change that narrative and take ownership of that narrative, because the one thing that we all have is a cell phone, and we actually have access to internet. When I grew up here in Ghana, my parents were sending videotapes so that, you know, their people can see them. I remember this in '95, where they would record a tape and they would mail it here to Ghana so that their parents could see them. My dad left in the 80s, right? But now you have a cell phone and you have WhatsApp. You don't even have to pay. You can literally FaceTime somebody anywhere in the world. And I think that's powerful, and that gives us agency. And what we do with that agency is what is going to allow our ecosystem to grow. So when I think of things that are allowing us to monetize, you know, industrial things are there, but content, I think there's opportunity in advertising, which is underutilized here. And advertising not just meaning I'm going to pay somebody to put my logo up, but really the actual advertising business that's worth $1 billion a month is not something that we are taking advantage of here, because we, you know, your IP, you can make a movie and you're not making any movies off the commercial. You're not making any money off the commercials that are showing against the movies, right? There's opportunity there. AI, you know, one of the young ladies was asked about the value of AI in her business. I think it's very important for everyone in Ghana to do everything they can learn about every component of AI, because that's where the future of the world is going, right? We need to figure out how we can leverage AI to do everything from making clothes to, designing our infrastructure, designing our roads, designing our farming, agriculture businesses. All of these things matter, right? These are opportunities that we need to take advantage of. I mean, also, we want to ask the government to help us in creating policy so we can make sure we monetize this and create an ecosystem. And I would say the last thing before, is compounding our efforts. One of the themes that has come up for me over and over this year is how do we compound our efforts? There's so many amazing people doing amazing things across Ghana. We have painters and artists that are selling paintings for $1 million. We have some amazing storytellers in Dentaa, Maya, all of these people. We have creators that are doing some amazing things that are known worldwide. But they're all individuals. I mean, my dad used to bring the broom together and tell us, if you break, you can break one broom, but if you put it together, you can't break it. And I think that as a Ghanaian community, as a culture, as a country, we need to kind of figure out how to leverage each other to kind of make sure that we can be as loud as possible in the world. Because this is the Black Mecca, right? Since before pre-colonial times, Ghana was the one that negotiated its ability to give away its colonialism. Right? We had 100 years to give our country back, and we took our country back. We showed the world what it means to be independent, and we fought for that. Right? Civil rights leaders came here to learn how to fight for freedom in America. I think it's a big deal, right? Afrobeat. Fela came here to learn. So how do we compound our efforts so that we can tell our story and own it and make sure that we can capitalize on it, I think, is the message we're trying to sell through our programming.
I love that. Thank you so much. Give him a round of applause for that. And, speaking to that, you're going back to this commonality around systems and the fact that currently we do exist in some sort of a fragmented ecosystem of sorts where everyone is working within their own silos to produce at their own capacities. So there's not one where we're bringing the next person up behind us. And that's the challenge that we see culturally here and how we make sure that we move towards that collectively. I'm hearing that as a theme right now, that if we're talking about monetization and how we double or increase or expand our efforts, it's around collectivism, it's around community, it's around compounding. And culturally ingrained in our natural system is that aspect of cultural community. That's how we're built, whereby the West thrives on individualism. Right.
Well, I don't know that the West thrives on individualism. One of the most popular things that is happening around the world is these private membership clubs. Mm-hmm. You have fraternities that are all over the world, right? These are private spaces. And then you have to also think about it. If somebody, I went to Syracuse University. I have a robust alumni system. Joe Biden went to Syracuse University, right? We have a bunch of people that went to Cambridge and Harvard. These are robust network systems that you can leverage to kind of, get a job or create an opportunity, find investors. These are important. We have that here in Ghana. We have people who went to Adisco, or who went to Infansipim, who went to these things. But how do we create an ecosystem that allows for that infrastructure to grow so that if somebody is an industry leader in oil or politics or whatever, they can create a space for young mentees to be able to follow that path in a way that makes sense for them to grow. So yes, in a sense, if you're an outsider looking in, America is or Europe is an individualistic community, but there are systems built that allow people to work together. And then beyond that, because I grew up and I'm maybe the only black kid in my class, if I see another black kid, I'm going to make sure each one teach one, right? And I think that's very, very important. Whereas here, because we all look alike, we don't necessarily understand the value of making sure that as I rise, you rise with me. And also just understanding, we need to kind of get rid of a scarcity mindset that just because I make it, you can't make it. There's just more than enough space for all of us to win, right? It's just really about understanding our expertise and where to apply it. We all don't need to do the same thing, but we can add value in different ways, right? So, and I think that's the hope and the mentality that we want to promote.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Good stuff. So thank you for that. So Rex, moving forward, as we go into the governmental aspect of this, as a part of the Black Star experience, you're helping to shape this national cultural agenda. And so based upon what Abdul was saying, so how can the government come into this space that can move us just beyond events into symbolism, but build an actual durable cultural infrastructure? What can that look like? And what projects are you currently working on that does protect that heritage and supports creatives and drives that level of economic value?
Thank you very much. I think that as a country, over the years, we have not been intentional. We have not put value on our creative content or our creative human resource. For example, because we've put in value on football within sports, every government comes in, they invest in football. That is why you have football infrastructure scattered all over the place. You have stadiums in Kumasi, Sunyani, all over the place. But you have only one theater in Accra, even built as a dash from China. It tells you the value we put as a country on our creative ecosystem. I heard my sister Dentaa talking about high life becoming 100 years. And what have we done as a country? Nothing. The thing is, yes, if Ibrahim has not built the Red Clay Studio as an individual, this thing would have never happened. Mm-hmm. I sat here, I listened to young people with brilliant business ideas. If you put together all of them, what they are looking for, to be able to help them push, to create the space to grow and to think continental, you forget about the rest of the world. Even think Africa. We have a market size of 1.3 billion. Are we saying that as a country, we can't support these young people to be able to expand and create more opportunities? Most of their ideas are global in nature. So, as a government, that is why I'm sitting here, because His Excellency John Dramani Mahama sees things the way some of us sees it. I'm an artist before going into politics. And it's because of this neglect that drove me into politics. Because you can stand behind the wall and have your say, but the politicians will always have their way. So I decided to go into politics so as to be able to help first to identify the values that we have within our cultural ecosystem, and also to advocate for policy for us to be intentional about some of the things that we do. Because we can't have a country where over 60% of our population falls under the youth category. And it is proving that the creative economy is the one that creates jobs for both young people and women than any other sector. And the government knows this. At least His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has said this over and over and over. The question is, we need to start to walk the talk. Because no individual can decide on his own that, oh, Ghana is 100 years, so I'm going to, high life is 100 years, so I'm going to do a major global activation to draw global attention on Ghana. No individual will do that. Private capital always chase profit. But these are some of the things that must be done by the state to enable the creative entrepreneurs. So I believe 2025 was a difficult year because of the economy we came to meet. Gradually, we can see the macroeconomic stability. We can see things happening. So we believe and hope that from 2026, 2027 going, we are going to be much more intentional. At least for the first time, there is a budget allocation for the Creative Arts Fund, which is 20 million. As little as it is, if we are smart enough, we can leverage this to raise in more private capital to push. The same thing applies to the film industry. And in Ghana, when we talk about the creative economy, people think of only film and music. No, 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 no. What about the business aspect of the creative economy? All these platforms that we're talking about, TikTok, whatever, which one do we own? So you do the creativity and other people will make the money. It is show business. 30% talent, 70% business. We are not doing the business. we're doing the show. And it takes policy. It takes intentionality to be able to invest, to create the enabling environment, to create the buffer, to empower Ghanaian young creatives to create that necessary infrastructure to own the business aspect of it. So, for example, our film industry is collapsing, if it has not already collapsed. Now we have new content creators. In reality, they are also filmmakers. But they finish this thing and go and put it on YouTube and whatever, and the money ends up in someone else's pocket. What are we doing to create our own infrastructure so that as a country we can also own an infrastructure that we can also distribute content throughout the globe? These are the things that we need to think about. And I believe that a journey of a mile begins with a step. And I'll use this opportunity to thank the young people who organized this brilliant event. They came to our office. We couldn't do much, but we gave them the encouragement. But I assured them that in going forward, we're going to stand behind them because this is a very, very important platform. That we're going to advocate from my office. We will support you and we will lead to bring in much more value so that this project next year, I want to see this whole place packed so that we can have real things going on. Thank you very much.
Just to add on
please.
to what Rex, you mentioned the word value. We don't value ourselves, right? You mentioned that, what about us building something here? If somebody had built it here, we probably won't jump on it. We'll jump on the YouTube. I'm sure there's many people that have built these type of platforms, but we won't jump on it. We don't value what we have as black people, as Africans. We're not valuing ourselves. And so when somebody else brings it, we jump on that. And we need to do better. We need to do more collectively in supporting each other. That's what, my brother Abdul was saying here. We're all working in silos. We're not working collectively. And I think we need to start doing that.
I love that. That's good. That's good. So based off of that, I'm giving you all one last question to kind of round this up on this thought. So because, Ibrahim, you spoke to the community and you have a space that thrives off community, I want you to pivot off of what Lady Dentaa said here. So how do we begin to create and build that community? How do we replicate what you've already done and you've started to do? What does that look like at scale?
Well, I guess it's all about support. We need to support one another. I remember when we were in school, and we were advised by some of our professors to find spaces and organize our own exhibitions, because in Ghana for a long time, if you were an artist, a painter or a sculptor and you wanted to show your work, you needed to go to Novotel, Movenpick or one of those places. But the idea is that when you go to the market space, it's also like a space which you can use for an exhibition. Even the cemetery is a space, if you take away the mysticism and the spirituality and everything, even that in itself you can use as a platform to start exhibiting your ideas. So the idea was that as young people, how can we come together in order to be able to build something together? Because sometimes we feel like we're in competition. We're competing with one another. So I have an idea, I discuss it with a colleague, and the colleague's like, oh, this is a stupid idea. No, the idea is that you have to identify the people that because artists, we always say that we are mad. But indeed, it is that we are mad because we're thinking outside the box constantly. Mm-hmm. But you need to find people that you can think with outside that box. There are people that when you have ideas, you should not share those ideas with them because you know that they will kill the idea immediately. Exactly. And by the same time, those people should be able to share their ideas with you. So if I have something that I want to do, I should be able to call Dentaa because I know that, she decided to to rent a plane and fly from here all the way to Barbados, which is crazy. And of course, she will not tell you that she lost a lot of money in that, but it's the significance that came with. And the idea that all the people who turned out to support, at the end of the day, it's part of the larger brand that she is creating, So it's very important. The idea of creating community is not just very simple. it comes with a lot of sacrifice, but in the long term, the idea is that it's actually it's going to change the way that the value system that is going to create within the landscape that we find ourselves in, and how that would affect the mindset of the generations that come after us.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. So it's around our value system, redesigning and restructuring for one another to find a way to actually collaborate, see where maybe your colleague may lack, where you can fill in, where you can step in, where you can build. What service can you provide? We don't need to compete anymore. We need to collaborate and affirm one another in the works that we're doing so that we can grow at scale. If we're all doing the same thing, somebody starts a clothing line, the next person starts the same clothing line things, and then we just see this starch competition as opposed to saying, you know what, they started a clothing line, I'm going to build a manufacturing facility, I'm going to do the marketing for this, I'm going to do the PR, and that's how we begin to grow. That's how we forge community, and we begin to actually see this creative economy move forward. So thank you for that, Ibrahim. Now moving along to my brother Abdul. Now, when we were talking, you mentioned, you know, how in the States they use spaces collectively, like the gathering spot, that come together for people, by people, just making sure that that work is happening. So if Ghana were to start from scratch today with no legacy constraints at all right, how would you intentionally design a creator economy that is capable of reaching $10 billion? What would you say we need to start?
Wow, you're giving me $10 billion.
I'm giving you $10 billion to redesign this.
Let me set up properly. I mean, first and foremost, let me just shout out Jumbo Spaces. I mean, Meister and his team have done a great job at creating an ecosystem in a space that helps a lot of creatives. And, you know, Meister himself managed Mr. Easy. I mean, they're behind Teresa, behind Mali Music, who have done amazing things worldwide. And, you know, I really appreciate them because of the hard work that they do and the support that they provide to a lot of creatives. So yes, there are remnants of what we need to do as a community here. So it's not to say that it doesn't exist. I just would love to see more of it, right? If I had $10 billion, I definitely would start with policy. I think there's an opportunity in education to make our students understand from childhood the importance of cross-collaboration. You know, I think it's important for us to understand that through school projects at different levels to first encourage us being able to see value in each other. I think it starts from an educational component, right? I think there's another opportunity that we need to also pursue as far as just kind of infrastructure that is needed for people like Mahama who's looking to build stuff to get some sort of support. I think that is very difficult. I've faced this with AfroFuture. The amount of taxes that we pay is not commensurate to the amount of dollars that we bring into the economy, and it's really painful on our part, right? And also, you just from an economy perspective, look at how much we created since the year of return. You can see less and less. We're seeing less and less of these people coming in because they've seen the increase in cost across hotels, transportation, food, things of that nature. So I would invest in, you know, maybe studying some of these things so that we can address it from the root cause.
Love that.
I would also create a fund. Like, I loved all of the pitches that we saw here. How do we create an opportunity for capacity building? One of the things that culture management is doing is we realized that as we built our company, we had to vertical in so many components. So we partnered with a MasterCard Foundation to create a graphic design program. And we see opportunities in kids not only learning the importance of how to design graphics, how to motion graphics, but also how do we leverage the best of the best to go into merch design, furniture design. Pinterest just named African homeware one of the top things of 2026. There's a market opportunity for us to push Ghanaian-made homeware, from plates to pots to chairs to couches. How do we continue to grow this space? And then also just in general, how do we look at advertising space? You know, annually people travel to Cannes to talk about advertising, $1 trillion business. You know, you see companies doing hostile takeovers, and we're in an economy where we see so many billboards, but it's not really an advertising market. You know, for every quarter, it takes one-fourth of a dollar is what the worth is to advertise in Ghana or in Nigeria or in Africa in general. Well, how do we enjoy that $1 in advertising dollars like they do in Europe and America so that we can create infrastructure value for our creators and not have to beg the government for money, right? I think there are a lot of people here that want to be able to create value for themselves, but the system is just not allowing for you to be able to extract enough to be able to support. And that's increasing that dog-eat-dog mentality where we're kind of looking like, not looking at the abundance, but just looking at how we're kind of cannibalizing each other. So we need to really figure out how to open up the market so that we can open it. And I think the last part of that $1 billion I'll spend on the airspace, how to figure out how to make it easy to travel across Ghana so that we can enjoy going to see his projects. There's absolutely no reason why our audience should come here and not be able to travel to the north to enjoy his gallery. I think we need to open up the market so that we all can see the opportunities instead of looking from Ghana inward to look at it outward and how we can export the things that we do.
Love that. Round of applause. So again, looking at this systems infrastructure and systems approach, and we look at the core foundation of what we have, we recognize that from entrepreneurial theory, that these successful places that we see where entrepreneurs, small businesses are thriving, have the actual institutional levers to support the entrepreneurs and the creators in that space. And what we have to realize from a policy perspective is that governmentally, we need to see that shift. Because you're right, taxes are quite high, but then do we see it poured back into our spaces where roads are available, gutter systems, lights, everything that will make it even more conducive when people come and travel and experience here? We don't often see it. And then this is a feeder system. It's a cycle. We need to be in a position where creators are empowered, where they're creating the jobs so that people can get the money that they need to go back and consume our content, consume our work, and support one another. And so it does start at this core infrastructural piece, which does sit at the government and expands to education, how we teach, how we learn from the home, starting from that community space, what we value, what Sister Dentaa has said about ourselves, what we teach about value. I think most of us, for the most part, are wearing our respective African designers in some way. I'm wearing chocolate. Dentaa, I'm pretty sure you're wearing somebody African. This is how we begin. We support our own and build up from there and see value that we don't always have to be in Chanel, but we can be in chocolate. We can be in Christy Brown, and it's absolutely all right. So it starts from there. So thank you for starting that conversation. Let's shift this model. It also begins with our mental models being shifted as well. So Rex, coming to you and working with the diaspora. So how do we begin to shift tourism, right, in the way that it goes just from nostalgia, them coming for Dirty December or just to engage, but really transitions into co-investment, right, and creation and this long-term ecosystem building. What needs to be done so, again, we access this 10 billion economy that sits at the helm?
I believe that 10 billion is not that much if we are to do things right. Mm-hmm. I believe that we need to start to think intergenerational. Every project we do, that's why I was very, very happy to hear the young people and the projects that they're doing. Ghana is a developing country, so things are not going to happen overnight. But I can assure you that things have started changing. And most of the young people, whatever project you are thinking of, think a generational project, because I'll use Ibrahim's studio, Red Clay. I just went there last month and I was shocked of what I saw. And once that we have a government who has now seen the light, for the first time in the history of this republic, an office has been created at the presidency to handle government's flagship project, which has to do with culture, arts, and tourism. And the president appointed a practicing creative to lead it. This is the first time we have a government that have more than 6 creatives in the government. It's a step in the right direction. So all of us must embrace and look into the future. We need to tap what is ours uniquely. We need to modernize without necessarily westernizing. If it is fabric we want to do, you cannot think of developing fashion without the agriculture, because cotton starts from the farmer. So if we say Black Star experience, what is your Black Star experience in agriculture, because you cannot develop gastronomy without a farmer. So it is interconnected. So we need, as a matter of urgency, we don't have time to waste, as a government and as a people, to think generational and be focused, so as to be able to take this country at its right place when it comes to creative economy, culture, tourism, and all that. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. All right, thank you. So last thing, and we are done. Sister Dentaa, tell us, you have the platform. What is the world waiting for from Africa? From what you've seen from Barbados to the UK and LA at the Grammys, what are they waiting on? What would you tell every creator in here? What do they need to tap into?
The thing is, they want us. They're all here. They're taking a lot of things from us. We think that slavery is done. No, it's a different type of slavery. Do you understand? We need to own our own things and be proud of owning it. That's what we need to do. Because they're coming. Do you know that now China is doing cocoa? Like, they come, they take our stuff, and they build it even bigger than what we have. Let's build the infrastructure. Let's support the creative economy. Let's support the creatives. Like he said, there's a lot of young people that have ideas, and they don't have the support. And then if you don't have the support, the idea dies. Because then you have to think about something else. Okay, let me go and do sales. Or let me go and start selling on the street. There's a lot of people who are pregnant with so many beautiful ideas. We need to start supporting them. And I actually wrote something. So the creator economy won't be unlocked by creators alone. It needs investors who understand the culture, policymakers who understand IP, and institutions willing to bet on the African creativity, properly structured. That's what we need to do.
This has been a great conversation. I hope you took notes. I didn't see enough handwriting going on, but it's hopefully logged in your mind. And of course, if you've been inspired here, you're going to take this to the next level, whether you're working in education, business, policy, wherever you sit, at which point of the table, we are a community now. This is our first time, our inaugural event. Let us continue these conversations. So the question is no longer whether or not we can actually unlock a $10 billion economy. It's a matter of if we're ready to actually build the systems that our economy demands, and are we brave enough to lead that transformation together? That's our question here today. Because money is already on the table, as Rex said. 10 billion is small. The world is already moving. What do we own? How do we transport that? How do we value that? And how do we prepare ourselves for building community around that? Thank you all. My name is Thompson. I'm thankful for being your moderator, and I thank Lady Dentaa, Ibrahim, Abdul, Omar. Give them all a round of applause.